It's all good.
You get pushed me along.
Oh, thank you. You're my hero.
What's that?
I've already got a book and a pen right there.
I had extra time, sir.
You had extra time. I get it. I get it. I've now got a...
I didn't mean that as a knock at all.
I understand.
Yeah, I did. I happen to think of it as like, let me put it out.
I get it. Okay. All right. So,
Sure. No, I would give it to him.
I'll need you to sign it.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure.
That's good.
And that is, I've got, that is 50 miles your car. Wait till you get over your routine. And it will, you're going to get to know you. It's always
Putting my little stuff together up there.
No, I got my badge today.
I'm just glad that's the good section. I got some bad ones too.
How you doing, brother?
That was, good to see you too.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, we need that.
You have the power to do that, right?
That's right. Oh, they don't like that?
Too distracted.
Too distracted. While they're standing up there?
Well, not only that.
Yeah, I need it back in my car. Chugging along. I turned down. I'm not going to open up that second rotation. For a little piece. Past president, legend. He's chief technical officer. He's a part of my driving public relations.
Hi, Cousin Jerry.
Want to get a picture of both of them?
You guys are standing.
You got the official badge.
If you look like people, that's well done.
We're always up for
Probably. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you gotta be right. I think I did get it. I think we're friends. Are you in there as dish tissue? Not minus.
To differentiate. about a year old.
I'm already good.
No, Rod, because I love you so.
Always the optimist.
I had to bring my. That's me. But if it makes you feel any better, I bought this.
I agree.
Because I'm in mourning. Then I really will be a line divided.
So what they'll do too is
I got a guy. Jerry, why don't you take that? We can handle that. I'm getting ready to roll anymore.
we have a video. Until you see what's down, it's hard to know.
That's me. Good to see you.
Now I can't do it, I can't see it from where
So there you go. So I'll post that picture and some other pictures.
Great, great, awesome. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay.
Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
I'm on a diet.
You buy the bonuses.
I'm not eating. I did. So I'll sit wherever you want. Since you want to sit over there with me? Sit over there with
Good to see you.
You got double recognition today. Patrick, are you anything?
Stop. Just
I did say that to all
Welcome, everyone, to the November 1st meeting of the Brentwood Rotary Club. We are glad to be back at the Martin Center, and I am your humble and grateful President, Sarah Johnson. Well, we're happy to be back, absolutely. Our invocation today is going to be led by Harrison McCampbell. Our pledge and four-way test will be led by Tim Stowell. So, Harrison?
You bow your head with me, please. Heavenly Father, as we're gathered here today, let us dwell on what our common bond is. You have provided the opportunity for this Rotary Club to join other Rotarians throughout the world to serve you by giving us strength in numbers. And like rational mathematics, it's as if 1 + 1 = 3. The individual components are stronger, when bonded and when acting on our own. Thank you for the opportunities to serve others. Thank you for the service to people who protect and help us in our efforts. Our military, state, and local police and fire departments, the staff here at 50 Forward, along with those who plan, prepare, and serve their lunch. Sometimes it seems that a lot of us that we come in contact with are either running from something they'll never escape or chasing something they'll never catch. The things that we think, say, and do help us to keep others guided towards your light by showing them what is right and what to do, as opposed to just telling them things they've heard from others. Help us to remember that the patience and faith are inextricably linked, Father, that without patience you probably won't have faith. Without faith you'll probably lose patience. Bless us and give us resolve. Keep us healthy, we ask in your name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, before we test the things to say and do as we're hearing it, first,
Is the truth?
second,
Is the fair law concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Good job. Thanks, George. Well, I'm going to turn over our program now to Miss Betsy Crossley to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians. And then Jerry Tanksley will be doing Happy Bucks.
All right, we've got some visitors today, and we have visitors that have visitors, which is really cool. Let's see. I'm trying to find. Oh, well, we'll come up first of all here to, yeah, here we go. Bruce, you want to introduce yourself and your guest?
Oh. I'm Bruce Simon over at Brentwood Breakfast. My son Robbie also Brentwood Breakfast.
Generational Rotary. So this and we'll come right inside the table. We have another guest. I'm going to let Sheila introduce her. She's visited before.
I'm Grace Swinford with us again and a potential member. We're really glad to have you back.
Okay, and looks like we have many guests at the top of the front table here, in addition to our speaker.
All right, well, I have the pleasure later on to introduce our speaker, but right now I want to introduce his better half, Nancy Bonds, his cousin Jerry Bonds, and his son Matt Bonds. And so maybe we'll hear more about all of these later. So we're glad to have you today.
And listen, John, we're glad to see you back too today. John Mike.
Mr. Tanksley.
All right, who's happy today?
I had the pleasure Wednesday to be at a ribbon cutting at the Harmony and got to see John and Virginia Stokes, and of course that was wonderful. They sent their love, and John's hoping to be back at a meeting real soon. But he said, "Be sure to tell everybody I really miss them and send my love." So I told him I would. Thank you.
Come on now, I gotta be happy today.
I'm just happy that my life has a program.
Hey, it's the little things in life, guys. Miss Tish over here.
I'm happy because I returned safely from Columbia, South America to see my daughter and I had a fabulous time and I'm ready to go back in March.
Fantastic. So we got next. Anybody? Come on.
He's working on it.
Hi, everybody. Those of you who weren't here a few weeks ago, I asked you guys to say a prayer for California. Y'all know I'm from there. Y'all.
Good job.
Did I do that right? Okay. And as a result of all of your wonderful prayers, thank you so much for this last week. My company is doing gift baskets as a fundraiser for the victims of the California fires. I would appreciate any of you that interested in a gift basket for the holidays, for Thanksgiving, for anything, birthday, I don't care, but I'm trying to raise money. So all the money raised through these gift baskets is going to the California victims of the wildfires. So if any of you are interested, please give me a holler after the program. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy because I had a chance to go to the World Series. It was a historic World Series in that there was never a home team that won a game, period. Which is amazing.
And I'm happy. Last Saturday night on 48 Hours, my daughter was featured. She prosecuted a case in New York. They successfully convicted 2 people of murder earlier this year, and this was a featured show on 48 Hours. So it's good to see her on national TV.
I wish I had $1 for each one of the Rotary readers that read Crockett this morning. But thanks to Beth Dormany, Marla Parsons, Chris Wilson, Jack Massari, Hunter McCarthy, and Harrison McCampbell. And we'll be reading at Lipscomb in November, Sunset in December, so watch your email.
We can make,
Thank you all.
We can make change for you.
Next time.
Thank you, Jared. All right, Dale Llewellyn, would you please come forward? Come on, not hard. I have a special presentation that I wanted to do today. Dale Llewellyn has achieved Paul Harris level +8. So here's your pen. I have another announcement to make. Next Friday on November 8th, your Brentwood Rotary Club Charitable Foundation made a donation to Leadership Brentwood, and that was one of the projects was to do 2 murals in City Park. And so they are going to have the unveiling of the first mural at 2 o'clock next week, and all of us are invited. So I look forward to seeing you all at City Park, 2 o'clock. And Patrick Wright has a brief announcement that he'd like to.
Just a real quick heads up to my environmental projects committee. We'll meet next week. You'll get an email from me either later today or Monday. Start the process of thinking about our little harbor cleanup, the 15th or 16th, I don't know, I've done it for 3 years, I forget, but we've done a lot. Coming up the end of January, January 25th, as usual, we'll meet at the library, hopefully clean all the sections of the river, and enjoy ourselves while we're doing that. So, but my committee, we'll try to meet for a few minutes next week, again, to get the word out, and I'll have some save the dates and stuff on the tables the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I want to also ask for everybody to please keep in your thoughts and prayers Charles Drummond. His father has been in the hospital this week, and that's why he's not able to be with us today. Also, please continue to keep in your prayers Bill McCarthy. I think some of you saw on the Rotary Reflections this week. He has to have a pacemaker put in yesterday, so that's why he's unable to join us this week. As well as Lynn McGill, Roger Wheelwright, John Stokes, and John Miles. Please keep them continued in their prayers. Want to remind everyone about the $1 Million Dinner on February 22nd. Please see Michael Heineman or Susie Lindsay or myself with any questions or if you'd like to sign up. Quick reminder about the foundation pledges. Next week, we're going to do our totals for what we've collected so far. A lot of you have done a great job of going online to the website while we were off premises for a couple of weeks and going ahead and making your foundation donations. So just as a reminder, next week we're going to be doing our totals once again. With that, I am going to turn our program over to Mr. Rod Freeman, who's going to introduce our speaker.
You know, I tell people when I go out, I'm in a crowd, I can't hear what's going on, and because everybody's at this level, and I need an ear. Right here is where I need it. I'm going to put this up here so and Jim, you can change it later on. So anyway, I have the privilege of introducing our speaker today, Jim Bonds. And like many of you, I've known Jim for several years. And our relationship goes back to when he first came to Nashville as the sports anchor at Channel 4. And is that Channel 2, and then you went to Channel 4 after that. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. But anyway, but also, man, I'm glad to see you because he has 3 children, and they're sitting right on top of pretty much where our kids were at Brentwood High School. I used to watch this guy play basketball and baseball over there at Brentwood High School. So this is kind of like old home week for me, and he's, of course, got his better half with him, Nancy, who taught out at Edmondson Elementary. So appreciate your number of years there, as well as Brentwood High School. So thanks for your service to all the kids in Williamson County. So, okay, so let me get into, Jim just recently retired. I say recently, he spent the last 14 years with Change Healthcare in sales, but really what brought him to Nashville was his relationship with sports, and as I mentioned earlier, Channel 2 and Channel 4 as a sports anchor. And I'm going to read this because I don't have this committed to memory, but some of his accomplishments include Alabama Sportscaster of the Year and Best Sportscast in Tennessee. His primetime special, Kings of the Court on the Kansas City Kings, won a local Emmy there. He's also hosted coach shows at University of Kansas, as well as at Vanderbilt, and he's done play-by-play for both of those schools. He's covered 2 Super Bowls, World Series, and did a Big Ten Conference Game of the Week. And he also, and I told him I was sorry to hear this, I didn't mean that you, I'm sorry you had to do this, but he worked 4 years with Doug Matthews, who was our speaker last week before last. Those of you that know Doug, I mean, sorry about that. But anyway, Doug Matthews and Bill King. 3 children besides Matt. He's got Valerie and Suzanne, and you've got some grandchildren here in town that you get to enjoy. And I talked to Jim the other day, and he's pretty modest, to be honest with you. And I hope we have time afterward for you to ask the questions. But what he's been able to do in his life and the people he's met and places he's been is only things that the rest of us get to dream about. So with that, I want to introduce my friend Jim Bonds.
Thank you, Rod. I appreciate that. We do go back a few years, don't we? We'll start with a brief, you'll decide if it's funny or not. You could use this anywhere. True story. Landed in LAX. I'm on my way to Dodger Stadium. You'll find out more about the Dodgers later. It's a necessity. And overhearing while we're at the baggage carousel, a couple of guys who were obviously LA natives. And it was at the time where I didn't really trust my GPS. So I said, by the way, guys, what's the fastest way to Dodger Stadium? And they said, you need a lot of practice. Okay, tough crowd. But it was a true story. Use that anywhere you want to. I grew up in a town about 175 miles from here. You know, Natchez, Trace, and go down. It's about as far as that is to Knoxville. Closer than Memphis, but it's in Mississippi. Now, some of you guys apparently don't go to geography school because you think you have to have a visa to go to Mississippi. At one time when we first moved here, 38 years ago, I thought about putting these bumper stickers on my back of the car. Mississippi, closer than you think. But I think small towns are the same, whether it's Adamsville, Tennessee, Savannah, Tennessee, or Boonville, Mississippi. You grew up in a small town, as I did, it's Mayberry. We drove our bicycles, rode our bicycles across town for baseball practice. We'd stop at the hamburger place and have hamburgers with a Tasty Freeze, and we'd play baseball year-round, basketball year-round. We were kind of nuts about sports. Now, my father wanted me to be a pharmacist. He saw my uncle in that cushy job at Tupelo, Mississippi, Rexall Station, Rexall Drugstore. He said, you know, that's really what you want to do, son. My mother was more of a pragmatic individual. She was the one that taught me never to end a sentence in a preposition. We talked a lot about subject-verb relationships and split gerunds, and she finally talked to my dad, and have you seen this science? Great. And then it was over in 1966 when my dad drove my best friend and I to Atlanta, brand new, spanking new Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. Saw the Dodgers and the Braves the last weekend in June 1966. That weekend, I saw 7 Hall of Famers in that 4-game series. Claude Osteen from Caney Ridge, Tennessee. He shut out the Braves 4-0 that Friday night. I'm 13 years old, And unfortunately, I remember this stuff. That tells you a lot about why it was over as far as doing anything but what I wound up doing, at least for a few years after college. The next day, the Dodgers and Braves played a split doubleheader, day-night doubleheader. They don't do that anymore because the owners don't want to allow, they don't do that anymore. Drysdale and a 21-year-old future Hall of Famer, Don Sutton, pitched. They lost both games by 1 run to the Braves. The next day, though, now that's Sunday, it was Sandy Koufax who beat Denny LeMaster 2-1 before 51,000 plus in that stadium. I loved everything about that weekend. I knew coming back, and it took us like 10 hours in that 55 Buick with no air conditioner to get back. But I loved everything about that weekend, and I knew that at some point I was going to weasel my way into doing something. And I knew I already couldn't hit a Little League baseball, much less get to that level. Maybe I could talk about it at some point. There wasn't a lot to do in our little town. What did you do in a small town of 7,000 people? Well, you went to Tupelo for dinner. You went to Memphis to visit my cousins. And Jerry Bonds, my cousin, one of those 4 cousins is here. He finally got smart and moved to Franklin 5 years ago. Glad to have you here. But we'd go up there to go to the zoo and things. But what we did have, like everyone else, we had radio. And I would listen to WWL out of New Orleans. The Houston Astros were carried up there. WLW out of Cincinnati. KDK out of Pittsburgh, Pirates, and WGN out of Chicago. 1965, rookie shortstop, Donnie Kessinger. Rookie second baseman, Glenn Beckert. Ernie Banks, first base. Ron Santo, third base. Adolfo Phillips, center field. Randy Hundley behind the plate. I listened to all those guys because I love to hear the night air bursting through them describing the baseball. And of course, every other radio station in Mississippi carried our good friend Harry Carey and Jack Buck. The Cardinals were kings in Mississippi, except I had to love the Dodgers. So you see Coach Bryant up there. You see a celebratory Mighty Herzog behind me there after they won one of their many AL West championships. But let's start with some brief commentary. I promise to hold this short. Do we put too much emphasis on sports? Of course we do. We have to learn to reel it in. I was watching the, I think it's ESPN series, celebrating college football's 150th anniversary. And yes, when some nut puts poison on Toomer's corner at Auburn, that's over the top. And when we just let sports consume us, that's too much. But we learn from sports. We can talk about Sandy Koufax, who struck out 11 Braves and went 9 innings that Sunday in 1966. He lowered his ERA to 1.56. His last 4 years, his ERA was all under 2, except 1 year. That year was 2.04. He also pitched over 300 innings. The Dodgers abused Sandy. He was one of the greatest left-handers, if not the greatest left-handers of his generation. But the thing I remember about Sandy Koufax was 1965 in the World Series. He refused to pitch on the opening game because of his religion. In Boonville, Mississippi, we had Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian. We didn't have a Jewish synagogue. So I learned about Yom Kippur Day. Never knew about that until I was educated by Sandy Koufax. So you learn things other than just baseball and strikes and first downs and slam dunks if you keep your eyes and ears open. And then there's an 18-year-old, number 18, who was a youngster at Ole Miss. I had just completed working 12 hours at Big Star. I was in charge of frozen food in the fall of 1968. A sophomore quarterback. I got home just in time to pick up the game in the second quarter. And a sophomore quarterback by the name of Archie was leading the Rebels to the win over LSU. They had already beaten number 11 Alabama. They were upsetting LSU. Archie became a legend. Now, put this in context. It's 1968. It's not a good year for anyone in the United States. Think about it. Martin Luther King was assassinated in April. In June, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. The Democratic National Convention in Chicago was a mess with race riots. And closer to home in the South, well, it was a mess too. Well, all of a sudden, at least in Mississippi, we needed a hero, and Archie Manning became our hero. That's why when people look back, and even Eli, when he got to the Ole Miss campus, he went into the Archie Manning room that we have there. He said, "Dad, your numbers weren't that strong." It was more than numbers. It was more than touchdown passes. It was Archie being there at a time when the school, and frankly the state, needed a hero. And later, when Archie would be hurt in Game 5, the team was 4-0, Ole Miss ranked 7th in the nation. He was hurt against Southern Mississippi and had to miss most of his senior year. He came back against Auburn in the Gator Bowl wearing a cast, and they almost pulled off the upset. Those are the things legends are made of. Oh yeah, I did mention, or forget to mention, that he lost to Tennessee one year, but he won against Tennessee another year. Let's bypass that because there might be a lot of Tennessee fans in here. But Archie went on to just beaten to the ground time and time again as a New Orleans Saint. You never heard him complain. He'd get up off that hard turf, concrete floor of the Superdome and keep on playing. All right, I was going to take a job as a general assignment reporter out of Ole Miss at Panama City Beach. Nancy was 1 year, but actually 9 months behind me. For some reason, I finished in 3.5 years. I have no idea why. She was right behind me. So I was literally packing my bags, going to be a news reporter in Panama City. I guess if you're going to start somewhere, Panama City's not a bad place to start, right? And then I got a call from the local station there in Tupelo. It was absolutely startup and it was terrible. It was just terrible. But the first thing I did, literally, you got to remember, 1974, there's no internet, there's nothing. I sent out letters to every Major League Baseball team, NFL team, NBA team. Can you send us a graphic of your logo? That's how we were starting from ground zero. We take a picture of the logo, make a slide of it, to put it behind I was the graphics department, the videographer, the sports reporter. It's a long story. But that's, I'm sorry. The one on the right, I'm sorry, I left it out. I spoke recently with Hope Hines and Rudy Capeless at our church, and we all agreed that almost everyone starts in radio, right? And everyone who started in radio, all we wanted to be was the next jock at WLS 89 Chicago, the Rock of Chicago. That's all we all wanted to be, because everyone listened to WLS. If we couldn't make it in TV, that's what we wanted to be. We all listened to the same jocks every night, and when we'd sign off at 11 o'clock at our local station, we'd tune in to WLS on our way home. And still to this day, it's kind of magical every time I visit Chicago, and sometimes I just tune in on the FM side on the internet. WLS, it's a magical station. Some of you think WSM is, and that's fine, they are. But WLS was magical. Anyway, I hung around the radio station. We did Dairy Day, we did play-by-play, we did the jock thing, we did it all. Like then, music and sports consumed my life. Probably still does, but we'll go on. Okay, here we go. We got Archie, we got the radio thing, and then I'm gonna throw in a little polyester for you just to see if you're listening. These are significant because we'll start on the right over here. The guy that looks like, well, came from another century. His name is Guy Bush. He won 175 games, lost 136, played 15 years for mostly the Chicago Cubs. Why is he significant? Why is he on this with Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews? Well, there's a reason for that. We'll tell you in just a moment. Sometimes I feel like Forrest Gump. I did an interview with Eddie Matthews over in the left, polyester guy, based on wearing the polyester pants. That's right before they rushed us off the field for a game in July of '74. Eddie Matthews was fired immediately after the game. So technically, I did the last game with Eddie Matthews as manager of the Atlanta Braves. I don't know if that's significant or not, but it could be an Owen too. Probably wasn't allowed to interview any more Braves managers. Also that day, I got Hank Aaron, who before the game, and by the way, as a journalist, you're not supposed to really ask for autographs. That's a no-no. But I did anyway, because I'm 21. I'm not even 22 yet. And I didn't know any better. So I got Hank Aaron to autograph a few balls. Do you have one of those? Did I get you one of those?
My brother's.
Oh, your brother. I'm sorry, Jerry. I got Hank Aaron to autograph a few balls for someone. Never me, but cousins. But Hank was not taking batting practice because this was right after he had his home run that broke Babe Ruth's record. Which brings us over to Mr. Guy Bush. Not a lot happened in the first few months in Tupelo, but Guy Bush, the whole thing was, in 1935, Babe Ruth had been sold by the Yankees when he's 40 years old, back to the Boston Braves. Well, it was a PR stunt. And he was 40, he was overweight, his legs were giving out. He didn't do a lot, except on one day in May 1935, he hit his last 3 home runs on one day. 2 of those, the last 2 against Guy Bush. Guy Bush is from Shannon, Mississippi. So I found that out, tracked down Mr. Bush, who was retired obviously by 1974. And we talked about several things, and the station said, why don't you bring him in, do a 30-minute show? So we did. And we had a time to do an in-depth interview. It was really a neat time to talk about his thought process, and eventually, about 20 minutes into the show, I got around to ask him, so did you serve it up to the Babe? Did you allow him to, because you probably thought it was going to be one of his last games. And no, he was very stern in his response at that point in time. But Guy Bush was, what's the old game, the 7 steps of Kevin Bacon, there you go, 7 degrees. Well, I was in 2 degrees of Babe Ruth as far as I was concerned. I thought, well, this is a lot better than going to a city council meeting in Panama City, Florida. But Guy Bush passed away about 10 years later. But had it not been for Guy Bush, and Hank Aaron would have already surpassed him as Babe Ruth, as home run king, when the 1974 season began. As it turned out, as you all know, Hank Aaron was 1 home run behind Babe Ruth when the season began. He started the season 3 games in Cincinnati. Dewey Kuhn demanded that he play at least 2 of those 3 games. He hit a home run in his first at bat at Cincinnati, and that tied him with Babe Ruth. So he did not play one of the remaining 2 games, and eventually broke the record at a game in Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. You've heard time and time again, either Vince Scully or Milo Hamilton's account of that against Al Downing of the Dodgers. And the guy in the middle is Jim Gilliam. One of the interviews I did in St. Louis that same summer, Jim was a Nashville native, and about whom the First Tennessee Ballpark. If you go to the First Tennessee Sounds game at the First Tennessee Park, you'll see that the street out front is named Jim Gilliam Way. More on Jim in just a moment. Good times, but time to move on to Huntsville, Alabama. About the time Nancy graduated the first week in August, we were married August 23rd. The next month, Huntsville came a-calling, and glad they did. Happy to get out of Tupelo and move on to Huntsville. And this is an amazing thing. Every year then, the SEC allowed sports, primarily print, but some media or TV folks to go around, and we would visit all 10 SEC campuses in 7 days. Now this is 1976. 75, we actually had a jet. But they said, we can land at a couple more airports if we take a prop, Music City Airways. You probably heard it, I'm sure you probably have flown in it. This was an experience, but more so, some of the characters on here. This looks like something out of a rock band roadie group. But behind me, I will take time to try to show you, but there are 2 flight attendants, and I wonder whatever happened to them if they made it out therapy with this group. I can't cover up some of these guys, but our Huntsville guy, Herb Winches, who I replaced in Huntsville. Here's Herb Winches. Paul Eels at Channel 4, some of you local Nashville natives, yeah. Bob Bell, extreme left-hand corner over there. Some great names, wonderful people. And literally, I kept a sheet next to my nightstand at each hotel because you'd wake up and you wouldn't know if you're in Starkville, Mississippi or Gainesville, Florida. And I shared camera duties with Jim Fife, soon later, a couple of years later, to be a long time, 20 plus years, voice of the Auburn Tigers. It was a great time to be in Huntsville. Very quickly here, things we did, we learned quickly in Huntsville, Alabama, about the importance of the Alabama-Huntsville rivalry. Everything we did had to be fair and balanced, long before Fox News coined that phrase. We would go down at least every other week. I would leave Huntsville at 6:30, arrive in Tuscaloosa at 10. We'd have Coach Bryant queued up for an interview. We'd have Bill Oliver and Malmore as the defensive, offensive folks. Do those interviews, leave Tuscaloosa at 11, be back to Huntsville 2:30, in time to start the day at that time. So it was a lot of fun. The picture on the left, Coach Bryant and Shook Jordan. That's at the Legion Field, 1975, the last time those 2 coaches met. And that's actually a picture by the Birmingham News. We were standing close by, but didn't get a picture. Picture on the right, Sugar Bowl, 1975. Joe Paterno and Coach Bryant met in that one, and we were there for that. There's a story behind that, won't go into it. It involves the station not wanting to send us, and the general sales manager, big Alabama fan, his wife, my wife, 4 of us jumped in the news car and drove to the Sugar Bowl. Didn't have a hotel. We stayed way up by the airport. Long story, maybe more time to tell you about that at some point in the future. A lot of great times in that era, because that's 1975-76, Ernie and Bernie show in Tennessee, right? Alabama coach Newton had a great team. Leon Douglas, T.R. Dunn, Ricky Brown, some of the players he had down there. Kevin Greeley, Phillips, those guys at Kentucky. It was a great time to cover basketball in the SEC. And then on to Kansas City. Kansas City had lost to the Yankees 75, 76, 77. So a lot of it wound up with like Freddie Patek, the shortstop, head bowed in tears. But they finally broke through in 1980. The Mad Hungarian, Al Grabowski over here, so you're going to see there. And there was reasons they broke through. They just put it all together. Whitey Herzog was the manager for most of those seasons. There's a double meaning of the picture on the left. This is at pregame, Game 3, Yankee Stadium in New York. Mike Ferrero is the Yankee third base coach. In Game 2 in Kansas City on Thursday night, the Yankees were trailing 3-2, and they eventually lost Game 2, 3-2. This is when it's only 2 out of 3. Mike Ferrero sends Willie Randolph. Come on through, buddy. Come on through. George Brett sends the relay throw. He's out at home. Steinbrenner jumps out of his seat, elder George Steinbrenner, and demands that Dick Hauser, the manager of the Yankees, fire Joe Ferrero, Mike Ferrero. Hauser refuses. Immediately after the season, not only is Ferrero fired, but Dick Hauser is fired. This is before Game 3. I've got Ferrero was manned up and came out and did a pregame interview with us. This is live back to Kansas City during a 5 o'clock feed. Clint Hurdle is standing by. We were going to interview him next. Clint Hurdle was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Literally, the title said, Next Phenom. He was 21 years old. Clint, again, Sports Illustrated jinx hits. Clint never lived up to that. He was a serviceable outfielder, and he had a good year in 1980. We were coming into the locker room the day he was being sent down to Omaha. He took his bat. He was rearranging the locker room. I stopped our cameraman out. I said, don't you need to go out and check your battery? He did. And journalistically, totally wrong thing to do. But I knew that I still got the interview with Clint to talk about his feelings and his emotions, and he was still hot about it. But I didn't feel like the filming, it was film at that time, was going to be anything but detrimental to Clint. He didn't know it, but a week later, Amos Otis was injured. Clint's right back up from Omaha, and he resumed his play that year. But Clint always appreciated that, because he saw me turn the cameraman away and not tape that day. And we stayed in touch over the years. In fact, this summer, the Pirates are in Atlanta, and I sent Clint a text, and I said, hey, you have our guy, Brian Reynolds from Brentwood High in Vanderbilt on your team. He's doing a great job. I said, my son coached him for 4 years before he went over to Brentwood High. I said, can you set us up with some tickets? And he did so. And I also sent him a text a few weeks ago after he was fired. I said, your future's not over. Your future is still to be written. And he responded back. He said, too blessed to be stressed. I'm fine. And so we've stayed in touch. And sometimes you make connections like that. And Clint's 5 years younger than I, but we've stayed in touch over the years. So it's good to know that sometimes things work out for the best like that. And happy to have friendships like that. And that's Amos Otis over here. The Royals had a great team. Darryl Porter, John Wathen behind the plate, Willie Aikens, first base, Frank White, Golden Glove, second baseman, UL Washington. But the reason they won, primarily, was this guy, George Brett, one of the greatest hitters of all time. We had the luxury, I was there 4 years, got to cover the Royals for 4 years. But that 1980 season was absolutely magical. We'd go out there, because we'd have a 5 o'clock newscast, so we'd go out there and watch him a lot of times taking batting practice. And George, even in this summer of 1980, when he just was chasing Ted Williams, there were some holy grails of sports, and one of them in baseball is that Ted Williams 400 batting average in 1941. No one has met it yet. But George was hitting over 400 as late as September 18th. That's literally, what, 12, maybe a few more days, 2.5 weeks before the end of the season. That's how late he was still hitting above 400. And he finished with a 390 average. He played 21 seasons. His numbers, 305 lifetime average, 3,100 hits, and 317 home runs. If he were in any other larger market, every child would know George Brett's name. Most still do. He's the first ballot Hall of Famer. But there's only been 3 other players in the history of Major League Baseball who's had a lifetime average of 300, over 3,000 hits, and over 300 home runs. Care to name them?
Tony Gwynn.
Sorry?
Tony Gwynn.
No.
Rod Carew.
No. Although Carew did, behind Gwynn, Rod Carew did have one of the higher batting averages. Very quickly, because we're running out of time. Aaron, Mays, and Williams. So when you're in company with those 3 guys, you're into some pretty good company. And also Tom Watson was winning Masters and British Opens during that time. And Tom was a tremendous baseball fan. He wasn't in the pro-am like on a Monday or Tuesday going to another city. He would come out, he would sit in the photo bay with us and talk baseball. And we'd often have these arguments over which is tougher, to hit a 95-mile-per-hour baseball or softball or baseball, curveball or fastball, or to hit a 30-foot putt with everything on the line, time. And he kind of agreed with us hitting a baseball. Some great videos on YouTube. You can look at that yourself. Tom was a great individual. Grew up on the back nine of the Kansas City Country Club. Had all the benefits of golf, but he's a very humble guy. It was wonderful to get to know Tom. Also, we covered the Kings. Obviously, we mentioned that. Loved covering the Kings. The other 2 stations really honed in on the Royals and King, the Chiefs. So it was a market decision we made. Okay, we're going to go after the Kings. The center picture is the first time the non-breakaway, this is still fiberglass, backboards have been broken. We happened to be there that night. And it's one of those strangest things I've ever encountered because we are literally at side court watching the game, and Darryl Dawkins of the Philadelphia 76ers, he goes up and you look at him because your eyes had never seen anything like it. As he slammed up and the glass started coming everywhere, it's like your mind, because it's never seen it, just doesn't comprehend it. It was like a 45-minute delay. They had to go find another backboard deep in the catacombs of the arena. And we called Dr. J and talked about it after the game because Dawkins was busy. I had to get an interview and get back to the station. But quite a night to watch the first basketball. Lou Alcindor. I had done a high school paper on Lou Alcindor because my high school English teacher knew me too well. I was really struggling with this Shakespeare thing, and she said, "Tom, just do something that you know about." So I did on Lou Alcindor his first year with the Milwaukee Bucks. Sit down in the back, she said, at Powers Memorial High School. And Lou Alcindor then, well, he was Lou Alcindor. He said, "I am sitting." True story. So when the Lakers came to Kansas City, I didn't know any better. I'm young, right? You get away with a lot when you're young, or when you're old. So I called the hotel. I said, "Could you put me through to Lou Alcindor's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, maybe?" I forget what his name was at the time. They put me through. I figured he'd sign in there another name, an alias. Hello? It's 11 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know what time they got in. "Hi, this is Jim Bonds at WDL TV. We'd love to come down and chat with you about tonight's game." "You tell Jim Bonds that I'm still resting. We got in at 2 o'clock in the morning. Goodbye." Okay. I guess he didn't know I did my term paper. So after the game that night, the Lakers swept the Kings pretty well. I went by and did an interview with him. I said, "Did you ever call? Was that you?" I said, "Yes." "Don't do that again." Okay. Had a great time in Kansas City. The competition was great. My competition on the other weekend station, Craig Sager. Wonderful guy. Craig, of course, left and went directly to TBS. And about, 6 years ago, we were on our way down to an Ole Miss Auburn game. I stopped for a Dodger Braves playoff game. He had done a pregame thing. I ran down to the edge of the seat and got to talk with him about 5 minutes. Glad I did. It was about, 6 months later, he was diagnosed with leukemia. Send him a note or two. Craig Sager. We knew. Ever since you look at Hank Aaron rounding third, you see a guy come out in his trench coat, that's Craig Sager. He got the interview on the field as Hank Aaron was rounding third. We knew that Craig was destined for great things. He was single. He would work 12 hours a day, just drove us crazy. He had a family, he had a daughter, but then Craig was out there working his tail off, meeting us on almost every story. But yeah, that was, and my co-anchor in Kansas City was one Gail King. Gail was always after me to get her Yankee tickets, and we had a great relationship. And of course, her good friend was Oprah, and she went from there to Hartford, where she stayed until 20 years later, we met in New York. I was working for a broadcast consulting firm at that point, right before going into healthcare, and she got her subject matter expert. I had my subject matter expert. We had 4 of us had lunch at a really nice New York restaurant, and we talked about what we could do for Old Magazine, and we reunited there. Very quickly, Marv Levy. We're getting on an airplane, the Chiefs, with Dan Fouts had just beaten the Chiefs. Marv is already in his first class section. I'm getting on. He's got this book, an hour after the game. So I walked back and I asked one of the other guys who traveled with the team all the time. We would go occasionally. I said, what is Marv reading? They said, that's a book on Russian history. That's how Marv gets over a game and separates the game. He reads Russian history. Marv Levy did not do well with the Chiefs, but he did okay with the Bills. 5 consecutive, he took the Bills to 5 Super Bowls. So we didn't know if he would, with that intellect, be able to communicate well, but I think really it's about Jimmy and Joe's more than X's and O's. Marv did well. They had a great owner, Lamar Hunt, co-owner of the AFL. And we're running late, but very quickly, KU, wonderful experience, Alan Fieldhouse. Bud Moore was their coach. Bud would leave the show after Kansas City, drive 45 minutes to Lawrence, get there at midnight, tape the Bud Moore show, and it was 110 that year, and that was it for Bud. Bud came from the Alabama staff and was this year inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. And let's just wrap it up here. This is good enough. I'm sorry I don't get to the Vanderbilt segment, but when you meet these guys, it's kind of neat. And that's number 7 and number 9. And kind of neat to talk to those guys, wonderful people. And let's see, the greatest athlete I never met, if you can find someone who can play baseball in the NFL, Pete Rose. I was going to make a comment about Pete, and then there was a guy I never did get along with, and this deals with our intern who came out of the dugout one day, and Reggie did not like female interns. That's all I'll say about that. And 2 of the greatest guys I ever dealt with, George McIntyre and C.M. Newton, and Clyde Lee, and thankfully after I left Channel 2, Charlie Mack had a lot of allergies, so I was able to fill in over Channel 4 for like 2 years. And then we did a play-by-play. I did the pregame and postgame for a Big Ten game of the week. Juan Burciaga is the person we all are thankful for because he made the ruling that NCAA was a cartel and everyone ought to have their own package, so we did a Big Ten game of the week. And then other things we did was going to Indonesia to do a documentary over there. A lot of fun. And then I got to tell you this. Junior Gilliam, when they were getting ready to name the street out in front of First Tennessee Ballpark, I called the Dodgers and said, hey, would Benny like to talk about Junior Gilliam? They said, yeah. I said, I'll be there. We did. And getting to meet Vin Scully, for me, is like getting to meet the President of the United States for a lot of people. So I sat out there after the game watching over Dodger Stadium and thought, you know, this is a long way from doing high school football like Alabama, Mississippi, and just looked up at the stars and said, thank you. And thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jim. I learned a lot. It's awesome. If everyone would please throw away your plates, throw away the tablecloths, and help put the tables up. Is that correct? And the chairs, we would really appreciate that. Jim, thanks for being our speaker. And you've done this before. If you wouldn't mind signing the book that we have that we're going to read to students in the Williamson County School Systems. And then this pen is a small token of appreciation for speaking today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all for being here. And with that...